Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday service of Now Creations. As I was meditating this morning, just sitting there, absorbing the energy, I couldn't help but feel how blessed we are in the sense that we receive the Creator's love, and then we can extend this love. Just kind of think about that, receiving the Creator's love within us, and then being able to extend this love. How blessed we are. How blessed we are. Let's begin. My dear friends, it continues to be a great joy to greet you in these weekly teachings. I am especially moved by the spiritual progress that so many of us are making. As many of you have said, you are calmer, more understanding, wiser, and happier than you have ever been. I applaud you for your efforts, and I want to remind you what a great blessing you are. What a great blessing you are, not just to your immediate family, but also to all of humanity and to the planet. You have become the way showers here to humanity and the planet. You are setting the standard for those who are coming, as well as those who are with us at this moment. It is this notion of setting the standard for understanding who you are that is the subject of today's teaching, entitled Together Again, Together Again. Please be attentive to today's teaching, inasmuch as it will set forth a very clear view of understanding who you are and how you function in the world. Let's begin. I will begin with a frequently used obituary saying, proceed to a little bit of Socrates, address then the complexity of our soul, selves, and then explain the four aspects of the self that are together again and not to be separated again. Let's begin again. First, the obituary saying. In reading the obituary of a second spouse who has passed, the words together again are often used to describe how the spouses are united in their afterlives. It is a very sweet saying and often gives comfort not only to the spouses who are passing, but also to the family who is envisioning that future union of their parents. As I often see something like this in the newspaper, together again in the obituaries, it reminded me of the many selves that we are and we have. Let me explain. The essence of Western philosophy, and for that matter, of all philosophy and theology, was pretty well stated by Socrates in the 5th century BCE, when he said two things. The first one you'll be probably pretty well acquainted with. The second one, maybe not so much. The first thing that Socrates said was that the most important thing to know in life is to know thyself. Well, isn't that the truth? The most important thing in life, and maybe the most difficult thing in life, is to know yourself. It really sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just know yourself. And yet, as we shall see, to know yourself is anything but simple, because there are many selves that we have. There are many selves that we have, and the various roles that those selves play. We'll address this notion of the many selves shortly. The second quote from Socrates is just as insightful as the saying, know yourself. This is his second famous quote. The unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. I think that we can all easily agree with that quote. Indeed, the unexamined life is not worth living. We agree to that. The problem arises, the problem arises when you see the complexity of trying to examine your life. There are just so many aspects to yourself, to your life, and to all of the roles that you play. Yes, the unexamined life is not worth living, but it sure takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of analysis to examine your life, to examine yourself. This is exactly what I want to present in today's teaching to assist you to examine yourself so that all of us together might more happily live the self that we are. I will do this by making two preliminary comments and then use the phrase together again to bring even greater clarity to knowing yourself. The first preliminary remark concerns all of the selves we seem to have. All of the selves we seem to have, such as, well, there's your worldly self. It's how you live your everyday life in the world. Then there's your personality self, the way you approach things in the world from that inner part of you. The worldly self and the personality self, they make up the outer self. And then there's all the inner selves. And the list indeed is quite lengthy. It starts with the emotional self and then proceeds to the mental self. And then there's the higher self. And then there's the soul self. And then the spiritual self. And then the God self. And if all of that is not enough, then there is the over self and the Christed over self and the I am over self. It kind of makes your head spin at times. You do wonder, well, who am I? Really? There always seems to be either more or less of who we are. There is sure a lot to examine. There's a lot to examine to live a life that is truly worth living. Which now brings me to the second preliminary comment. The second preliminary comment. To begin to examine our many selves, we need to start with a beginning point, a beginning self. So for us, that beginning point is the soul self. Let me briefly describe two aspects of the soul self that will provide a good basis for examining our total self. The first aspect of the soul self is one that you know. It's the inner you. It is the inner you of which you are clearly conscious. It is the inner you that you know in such phrases as, oh, here I am, or this is me. This is my aware self. It is the inner you of which you are aware. Yes, I'm aware. I'm conscious of being me. It is your decision maker. You clearly know that this conscious inner you is really your soul self. Just good to know that. Let's use that as our starting place. That inner conscious decision maker, me, my soul self. The second aspect of the soul has these three qualities. Please jot them down if you're not recalling them. When you are quiet and you take the time to be so, notice I said when you take the quiet time, you begin to realize that the soul, the conscious inner you, has these three qualities, but you have to take the time to be aware of them. The first quality of the soul, the inner you, is that it is an observational platform. The inner you is that observer part of you that enables you to see what's occurring in your present life at the moment. It helps you to see what's going on at the moment in your life. It's that observational platform we sometimes call the observer self of your soul. Secondly, the conscious soul is also free to respond to what is engaged in. This notion of freedom is the key of knowing yourself. You are free at any given moment to decide the course of action you will take in life. You're free. There's no one yanking your chain. There's no one to blame. There's no one to please. You simply, at any given moment, are making a choice as to how you will respond to the present moment. You have an observer part of you. You are free. And now the third aspect. The third aspect of the soul is that you are creating the reality of your life by the choices you make. Such taking of responsibility for creating your life, quite frankly, is a responsibility that many people want to back away from. It puts the onus, the responsibility of you, right out in front of you, plain and simple. While you would never want anyone else to try to tell you what to do, oftentimes many people do not want to take the responsibility of creating life by their choices. They kind of prefer to see, well, what is life bringing to me, rather than me taking responsibility in the freedom of my choices. Thus, we clearly understand that to allow life to determine us, rather than we determining life, is a choice. It's a choice that we make. So whether you take charge of your life or allow others to take charge of your life, you realize that you are the one who is choosing. So now, with these three qualities of the soul, an observational platform from which we see life, I'm free, and I'm creating my life. We're now ready to return again to the phrase, together again. Please take some notes. The soul, your individual decision maker, is the basis for being together again. While there are four aspects of the soul being together again, two of these aspects are from the soul upwards, and then two of the aspects are from the soul outwards. Let's begin with the two aspects of the soul upwards. The first aspect of the soul upwards, which really makes it nice to be together again, is the very fact that within each individual one of us, as we realize we're free to make our choices, a dilemma sometimes arises, because you've probably found on numerous occasions, now that you say, well, I am free to do whatever I want, the question then arises is, well, what are you going to do? How will you create your reality? It's one thing to say that you're in charge, but it's quite another to know what you're in charge of. What will you do? Thus, it's very easy for the soul to abdicate its freedom and allow the world to determine its agenda. Fortunately, the dilemma can be averted because that soul is now together again with your spirit. Did you forget that you are a soul spirit? And it is the spirit of you that provides the principles and the values. It's the spirit of you that provides the principles and the values to direct your soul's individualization. The Spirit provides the guidance for your soul to express itself in tried and true ways. Thus, the soul is very happy to be together again with the Spirit. But let's continue. The plot thickens. Now you might be saying to yourself, yes, the Spirit is giving me principles and values, but what are they guiding me to do? This question is clearly answered in the second upward movement of the soul and has been beautifully expressed in the teaching of A Course in Miracles, which states, "Dear child of God, you are an idea in the mind of God, which has not left its source." Now you know this, but let me repeat it. You are an idea in the mind of God that has not left its source. Well, let me tell you, the soul, your soul, is very happy to be together again with your source. Because you, your soul, your decision maker, has come forward from the source with two very important directions. Listen closely. First, you are an idea in the mind of God. You are an idea in the mind of God. This is your purpose. Your purpose is to come to know, to feel what you as a soul from the source is most inclined to do. It is the source's idea in your soul that is your first direction. So important. It's the source's idea of you in your soul that is your first direction. It takes time to feel this, to intuit this guidance. But then there's also a second direction from the source, because, well, you have not left your source. Or put in another way, the source, your God Spirit, the source is still with you, inspiring you and encouraging you to express the idea it had in mind for you when it brought you forth. Are you getting this? That the source is still with you. You're still with the source, giving you the inspiration, the encouragement to express the idea for which the source has brought you forth. Now, do you not clearly see why it is so important to be together again with the source, to know what it has in mind for you, and to continue to inspire you to express it? So nice to be together again with your source. And then you can see the role of the Spirit. The Spirit also provides the principles and the values to keep you as a soul on course. It's so easy to forget the way and become wayward. Thus, the soul breathes a great sigh of relief once it has come together again with the Spirit and with the source. This is the upward movement of the soul, together again with Spirit and source. We're now ready for the second movements of the soul. We will now present the outward movements, one that you know, and then present maybe a more elevated movement of the soul. Let's go. First, the initial outward movement of the soul that you have in your particular life. The initial outward movement of the soul brings such relief. Oh my, does it ever. It brings such relief to your personality self. The personality self is so happy to be together again with the soul self. Let me explain. Now that the soul self has come together with the spirit and source, I'll say it slowly. Now that your soul has come together with spirit and source, the personality self, your expressive vehicle, is so relieved because until the soul was reunited again with spirit and source, the personality self and its outward expression, the worldly self, were under the negative energies of the ego because the soul was separated from spirit and source. Now be honest, when the soul was separated from spirit and source, your personality self, your mind, your emotions, and your body, were they not under the negative energies of the ego? You know them all. Fear, worry, guilt, anxiety, jealousy, depression, frustration. The list goes on and on and on. Is it any wonder that the personality self says to your aligned soul now, thank you, thank you, thank you. I was at my wit's end. You showed up just in time. I was in danger of losing it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so good. It's so good for your personality self to be together again. Wow. And of course, what great service your personality self gives to your soul, guided by spirit and source. What a pleasure it is to function in this way now, calmly, smoothly, wisely, happily. Ah, it's so nice to be together again, personality self with soul, bringing heaven to earth. Let me now address a newer, more elevated movement of the soul outwards. This time, not only with the individual element of the personality self as a whole, but with all of the individual parts of the personality self, the body, the mind, and the emotions. A teaching primarily from A Course in Mastering Alchemy is that the soul is now bringing greater light, greater illumination, greater knowing to your physical, mental, and emotional selves, the human personality. This greater light from the soul, coming from spirit and source, this greater light from the soul, coming from spirit and source, is now elevating the individual parts of your personality so that you are moving from simply being that human being to becoming a Christed being. While this elevation by the soul is raising the human personality into new possibilities, it is also making the human personality so much happier being together again with the soul. For now, the human personality is ready to advance beyond its old status of limitation. Wow. Greater light, greater illumination, the elevation of the personality self and the worldly self. A new human being is being created to hold this greater light from our soul spirit in our soul source togetherness. Much more of this development will be in future teachings. But in conclusion, this notion of being together again has far-reaching ramifications. While it usually is focused on a human relationship, it really does speak, does it not, to the relationships of your soul. The reality of the individual you, the soul, is happy to be together again with the upward movement connected to spirit and source, and the outward movement connecting your personality and your worldly self in a total sense of self. We are knowing in ourselves. We are knowing ourselves in ways maybe far beyond what Socrates had in mind. And we are moving forward, happy to be together again, happy to be together again with the many parts of ourselves. And of course, continually happy to be together again with all of you. Happy to be together again. Let me now take you into meditation, and what a joy it is to do so. We have to admit this is kind of fun, huh? This is kind of fun. Coming to know ourselves in ways so far beyond what we thought. Yet coming to know ourselves in ways that are so much more real than what we previously thought. So let's begin as we normally do by simply focusing on the breath. Again, just breathing in and breathing out and allowing your soul to guide you, knowing that it knows where to take you. Relaxing your body, reducing your mental chatter, and bringing you to the fore. Together again. How many times have you seen that in the obituary pages? It's a very sweet thought. Coming together again when we have completed our lives here on the planet. Coming together in the future. But is it not also important to understand that we can come together right in the present? Not just with others, but especially coming together to know yourself. The self is really complex. Until it isn't. Let's take a nice little snapshot of yourself. First, here you are as a soul. This is the inner you. It's a part of you that's conscious of yourself right now. Here I am. This is me. This is your decision maker. It has those three wonderful aspects. It enables you, first of all, to observe what is going on. It's an observational platform. Just take a moment to observe that. Okay, I see what's clearly in front of me. I see what I need to do today and what I might need to do long range. I observe it. I see it. And then secondly, you're free to respond however you desire. That feels good. But right off the bat, many people start saying to themselves, well, what should I do? Yes, I'm free, but what do I do? Let's hold on for a moment on that question. I observe. I know that I'm free. And, well, I make choices. I can hear you saying, I know I make choices, but what do I do? What do I do? So it's important to, first of all, just understand your soul. Observe. Know that you are free and that you create your reality. I know, but what do I do? It's where the upward movement of the soul comes into play. Let's start with your source. You are an idea in the mind of God. Every one of us has that certain something in the very center of our being that we are meant to do. It's the idea that God had in mind for you. Let's not worry about the past. But right now, what do you feel is God's idea for you to be doing? Would you take a moment with me? What do you feel is God's present idea for you to be doing? This is really important. What do you feel God's idea for you right now is inspiring you to do? You're the creator now. The spirit, your connection to the spirit, will keep you on the straight and narrow. It will give you principles and values that will guide you, that they will guide you in the idea that God is presently instilling into your soul. You have to be willing to go within and to know God's idea for you at this time in your life. And then allow your spirit to keep you focused, knowing that you can do it. And can't you just hear your personality self just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I needed this guidance. This clarifies so much for me. Now I know what I'm doing rather than just being confused and trying this and trying that. I have a direction. And I'm ready to work with this direction. I'm ready to be that delightful human being, bringing heaven to earth. I'm ready. This is what I've been gearing for. But your human personality is not the same old you anymore. Your human personality needs to release the old limitations that the new light is bringing in. Your human personality is ready for an uplift. You're not the same old you. The light is elevating your mind and your emotions, your body, your entire worldly self. You are the light of the world. Isn't it nice to know yourself as the light of the world? Which is simply coming together again. Coming together again. with all the parts of yourself. Knowing yourself.
I
Together again. Together again. A very sweet phrase for those who have passed, but also a very sweet phrase and a true phrase for those of us presently here. The reintegration of your beautiful self. Together again. The fullness of you. Namaste.